Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I have Raman Hari. She is an accomplished intuitive coach, skillfully merges the practices of intuitive reading and life coaching to guide her clients. Her influential social media presence has touched over 1 million people, offering inspiration and insights. Raman specializes in facilitating workshops and one-on-one sessions with a focus on healing anxiety and stress, fostering a foundation of inner peace, and guiding individuals towards a life filled with purpose. She holds a deep-seated passion for healing at the subconscious level and emphasizes the vital interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit in her coaching approach. Wow, thank you so much, Raman, for joining me today on my podcast show.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me, Gina. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you because we were just talking about how this world right now is going through a shift, and I feel that the frequency that we're emulating so much love right now, at least you and I, and I'm just trying to have like women like you come on this show to share their expertise and how they're helping and making a difference in this world. So welcome again, and just can you just share a little bit about your personal journey into becoming an intuitive coach?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I won't go into the really long, in-depth story, but I guess briefly, I really sought out some sort of help for myself. I was dating someone at the time who knew an intuitive coach who actually was a family doctor by trade. So getting into this, I actually was seeing a family doctor who was an intuitive coach. And I went to her because I was having panic attacks. I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. And I didn't realize really at the time that actually I was experiencing anxiety almost my whole life. And so seeing this intuitive coach for the first time was really the beginning of my deeper work. And she really made me see where a lot of my anxiety was coming from, my upbringing, childhood stuff, as well as the certain fears that I was still holding on to sort of in my body, right? We've all heard of, emotions being trapped in our body. So it was a lot of really big realizations, big aha moments. After seeing her, I decided I wanted to, well, I already knew that I wasn't really happy in the career I was in. So I really just quit my job, my 9 to 5 job, and decided I wanted to do something more meaningful. And it was really by accident that I started intuitive coaching. I didn't go into the intuitive coaching sessions and go, oh my God, I love what she's doing. I want to do what she's doing. But what I did instead was I took a year-long program to become, not necessarily to become an intuitive coach. You got the certification at the end, but I took it because I wanted to learn the skills for myself. I wanted to learn how to coach myself. I wanted to understand even deeper where all this childhood stuff, all of the stuff was coming from, all of the anxiety I was experiencing. I think it was about 6 months into the program that I had this really interesting light bulb moment where I just thought, wait a second, maybe this is something that I could do. And I resisted it a little bit. I did my practice coaching sessions and realized people were getting something out of it. And still, I was a little bit resistant. But then I don't really know when the switch flipped. And I decided I wanted to pursue coaching. And I haven't looked back since. Like, I've really just kept going. And here I am today. It's been about 5 years at this point. And I love it. I love it so much. I love the impact I get to see my clients having. And yeah, so it really started from an intuitive coach and then, kind of
Yeah.
accidentally stumbling into the actual career. Yeah.
That is amazing. That's a nice 5-year journey. Then I'm sure you've learned so much and just like, wow, I can't believe I'm here now helping all these people. It's interesting because I never really heard of the word intuitive. They always say trust your gut, that's your intuition,
Mhm.
by the way. But it's interesting because I started going into my coaching journey once my intuitive business coach yes, an intuitive
Wow.
business coach. She's the one who got on a call with me and she was like, you know what? This is what you need to be doing. And I'm like, how do you know? Because at first I was kind of shy to tell her, well, I spent a lot of my life just drinking and partying. And it wasn't until she asked me the question, well, are you sober now? I said, well, of course I've been sober. I've been sober for like over 4 or 5 years now. And she's like, well, that's what you need to be doing. You need to be helping people, in their, get into their, become either sober or help people just stay in their sobriety. I said, light bulb moment, right? So I was like, oh,
Mm,
wow. So this was the first time I actually experienced what an intuitive coach would be. And believe me, very helpful. And I then am also learning about my intuitive skills and just like, oh, wow, I didn't know this because I've been speaking to a lot of psychics and a lot of ones who actually read like my Akashic records and everything and told me like, hey, gave me like a blueprint of Gina. And I was like, whoa, blown away. So I love that we can actually explore our intuitive side and then help people in that way. So yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And I wanted to also ask you in specific because I also suffered anxiety and some depression, but the anxiety stemmed like from my childhood as well. Like I was Okay, so like I was sexually molested from the ages of 6 to 12 years old, but I had kept that inside me and I had like stomach ache, like stomach ache, stomach ache, stomach ache. The doctor prescribed it, a pediatrician had prescribed it as irritable bowel syndrome, but I didn't think I had that. Like I was taking like Mylanta. It was all the nerves and the anxiety and the stress that was going to my stomach. Well, eventually later on in life, it went to my chest and I was having heart palpitations, panic attacks, face getting numb. I feel like I was going to pass out and die. Like I think I was actually hospitalized several times because of that. I think it was also drug induced as well because I was partying and doing crazy stuff. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to focus on helping people with overcoming anxiety and stress?
yeah, so like I said, I had some of my own, childhood things that I didn't really realize affected me as an adult. And the adult mind can very easily go, "Oh yeah, this happened or that happened or that's the experience I had." But the child still lives in us. And so a lot of the earlier coaching that I did was actually helping people connect to that child that still lived within them and was still kind of experiencing or replaying those earlier memories or earlier wounds. And it's interesting because, typically when we think of trauma, we do think of like the big traumas, right? But it can also just be because I've had a lot of clients that say, well, I had a great childhood. So why am I so anxious? And it can even be the smallest things. An uncle making a comment about your weight at dinner, and now suddenly you're binge eating and you're going through this cycle all the time and you don't know why. So it could really be the smaller things as well. But I think for me, I'm just so passionate about anxiety and stress because, like you, I also had a lot of the physical symptoms. For me, it was a lot of, I suddenly started breaking out into like eczema. None of my family had eczema. So I was really confused about why I was having all of these strange physical phenomenons happening. And so I'm trying to think, nausea. I would have a lot of, um, I would have a lot of stomach issues as well. And so for a while, I thought, oh, I should go off gluten. And I was doing all the dietary things. And our stomach is really, that's where we house a lot of fear. And I didn't know that at the time. And so I think for me, it did get so bad that I got into my physical. And as soon as things get physical, that's when we get really serious about healing. And yeah, so I think for me, wanting to help people with anxiety and stress specifically is it comes from my own background with it, my own experience of how difficult it can be to live in that anxiety. And I'm not a high functioning anxious person. I am a low functioning anxious person. So if I have a lot of anxiety and stress, I can't do things. And so, unlike some other people, I've seen clients who are having panic attacks, but then like really high level getting out there in their career. I'm not like that. If I have any sort of intense anxiety or even if depression comes into play, I'm horizontal. So for me, it was vital to work on my anxiety and stress because otherwise I wouldn't be able to participate in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I want to share that with people. Like, oh my gosh, you can participate in life and you don't have to hide and isolate yourself. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a solo journey. We can get that help. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was like in my severe anxiety, and I thought alcohol would just be the cure to it because, when people get off work, what do? They normally say, "Oh, I'm going to have a glass of wine." They'll go to happy hour with their coworkers and they just want to wind down a little bit and just relax. And so in my mind, I was thinking, well, if I just drank everything, it would go away. But in all actuality, it really made it worse. And I noticed then those panic attacks were increasing daily. There was like, normally what I would just have maybe like 3 a week, I was getting like 3 a day. So it's not good to use substances for whatever condition that we have. We really need to get to the root cause and what's going on. So, and I'm glad that you brought up the point that it doesn't have to be a big trauma. It could just be something as simple as like you said, someone said, "Hey, you put on a couple of pounds, Thanksgiving's coming up, right?" So
Mhm.
you're going to be at the dinner table, and it's some sort of things like that can trigger somebody, and we just don't really think about it, but our body feels it, and we're just acting on it as well. So thank
Mhm.
you for bringing that up. And then could you also explain what you mean by creating a baseline of peace, and actually how does this help your clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, oh my gosh, this is like the bread and butter of everything I do. So, creating a baseline of peace helps us because, you know, there's so much that we want to do in the world. It's amazing when you sit down and talk to someone about what their dreams are, what their goals are. It's it's amazing. Like humans have these goals and these ambitions, and when we create a baseline of peace, it actually really helps us with showing up in the world, not just connecting really beautifully with the people around us, but also it helps us step into our purpose. It helps us step into who we really are authentically. And so when we're able to sort of what I call living beyond anxiety, when we're able to live beyond anxiety, it helps us connect to our intuition and our inner wisdom. I don't think we realize that when we're really stressed or anxious, it kind of muddles our inner world and we're not able to hear our inner voice. And so that to me is priceless. Like if we can get to that inner voice, it really helps to knock out a lot of like the comparative voices that come into our mind. That person's doing that thing and that person's doing that thing. It helps us to really get in touch with our truest desires. So, I mean, there's just endless reasons why it's so important to create peace. I think if you look outward, it's really easy to get caught up in the chaos and like drama of the world. But that doesn't help us with creating our purpose. That doesn't help us with shooting for whatever goals we have. And so creating a baseline of peace is really about getting to that inner wisdom.
Yes, and I'm noticing more and more the word authenticity come into play here because a lot of people have been ashamed to be who they truly are because of the conditioning of this world and how we were taught as children, even on like shows that we used to watch. And me growing up as having older siblings, like I would always compare myself to my sister, even though she's like 10 years older than me. And she was 6 feet tall. She was a skinny one. She was all into modeling and everything. And here I'm only like 5'5". And not like petite like she was, but there's that comparison thing. And I feel like a lot of people, especially like using social media, don't get me wrong, I love social media, trust me, but I used to be the one that would be like, oh, they're going on this trip. Oh, they look so happy. Why am I not happy? And I think it's like, you know what? I'm sure it took them as a family photo that they had just put on Facebook. I'm sure it took them like 5 times just to get that photo because I know because it happened to me with my family. Because trying to get everyone to like smile and everything, but nobody knows about actually what happened before we took that photo. Who we were all fighting or what this is that. So I think that people just by being real and like even sharing their stories on social media, whether it's having to deal with anxiety or depression or drinking, any of the things there, I really feel that just by people being their authentic selves, it really will bring light to everybody's mind because there's a lot of chatter going on in our heads, and that chatter is not always good. And so where you're talking about going in and trusting yourself and listening to that inner voice, let it guide you because it's there to help you. And I was telling you earlier as well, like I was listening to mine and now it's telling me to do all these things and I literally like listen to it and I'm like, ah, now I see why I'm supposed to do this. Ah, this is why. Ah, like all these like other light bulb moments. Do you ever experience that as well for yourself?
Oh my gosh, yes, I totally resonate. That's for me, it can be as simple as choosing what to eat. Like
Yeah.
it could be as simple as those, day to day. My mind is telling me to eat that, but there's something within me that's telling me to have that. Um, it's kind of amazing when you start listening how it's that inner voice is guiding us to our greatest health, to our greatest
Mm.
vitality, to our greatest friendships. Like the amount of people that I've met just by following my intuition and just going for it. And sometimes, and I think this is where people get mixed up, intuition doesn't always feel really comfortable. Sometimes what our intuition is telling us to do is a little uncomfortable. That's me stepping outside of my comfort zone. That's me getting a little bit
Mhm.
nervous to like meet this brand new person or whatever it is, but it will always guide us to like the greatest, our highest timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Because and that's the thing, it's good to get out of our comfort zone. Otherwise, how are we going to grow? If we don't grow, how are we going to evolve? And then if we don't evolve, how are we going to help people? And our biggest missions is to love on each other and help everybody to I feel like if everyone had inner peace, there'd be like world peace.
Oh my gosh. Don't get me started. I honestly, world peace will not begin unless we have inner peace. And
Mhm.
I've seen, I've even seen myself as well, like go into nature or go into like a beautiful spot, but not enjoy it because something's going on inside. And that I always bring up that to my clients because sometimes people will say, well, if everything is perfect and if, this and that, then we can be happy. But the thing is, everything can actually look perfect and we might still not be at peace. We might still not be happy. We might still not be able to accept the beauty. And so it really does start within. I love that you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, how does spiritual foundation, since we're talking about spirituality, and play a role in reprogramming the subconscious?
Ooh, that's a beautiful question. Oh my goodness. So the subconscious is really programmed from society, from how we grew up, the people around us, our leaders, our teachers, authority figures. And so it's sort of, there's a default programming, there's a default setting. And in order to shift out of that, I find that it's really important to make sure that we're replacing that programming with something that's really helpful and beneficial. And like, for example, say you have a goal that you want to reach, and your subconscious programming default um, is always like pushing you and you feel all this pressure. Well, if you push yourself and feel that pressure, it's not going to be helpful. When we're stressed, it actually decreases our productivity. That's a side note. And so for me, I find that when we bring in the spiritual foundation and we kind of start to reprogram our subconscious with the spiritual foundations, then that actually lifts us up so that we can naturally start going towards our goals rather than pushing ourselves, forcing ourselves, feeling all this pressure. And so spiritual foundations for me are simply being more in our heart rather than in the fear, right? We've all heard that, being more in the love rather than the fear. Spiritual foundations have to do with softening our grip on everything and letting go of the control that we don't actually have. Right. There are some things we definitely have control over, how we show up and the actions that we take. But then there are some things that we just don't. And so these things to me are some of those core spiritual foundations that, again, allow us. I just keep on seeing this vision of like being lifted up. They lift us up so that we can naturally go towards our goals. And that's a lot more sustainable than if we are to push and force and pressure ourselves, because that ends up leading to burnout and fatigue and exhaustion and thinking, why did I go for my goals in the first place? This sucks. So it's really a practical thing. to have that spiritual foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why and I like that you focus on the spirit, the mind, and the body, because those all are needed to make us
Mhm.
whole, And so but I was going to ask you, as this came to my head too right now, like as far as like the intuitive coaching, like do you ever find like any type of like some common misconceptions people actually have about intuitive coaching that you would like to like say, hey, let me set the record straight here?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. For the most part, my clients who show up are pretty open to the intuitive coaching. I think people, when they see the word intuitive, the title intuitive coach, they usually don't think, oh, she's actually intuitively reading me. I think it sounds more like, oh, it's more flowy coaching and it's not super intense coaching. So I think because of how people interpret the word, I usually don't get very many people who are, you know, um, what's the word?
Yeah, for me, like,
Hesitant or yeah.
yeah, I would be like, if I saw the word now for me now these days now, I'd be like, oh, intuitive, I'm for it. I'd get excited
Yeah.
seeing that word intuitive because I think
Yeah.
everybody has everyone has an intuition. And I was just talking to
Mhm.
my husband the other day. Don't mean to cut you off if you were actually saying something, but it was coming to my head. And sometimes like
That's
when
all
things
good.
come to my head and like literally will disappear. So I have to like catch it right then and there. I'm like, okay, let me just say it now. But my
Mhm.
husband, like, he was like intuitive. When I started using the word intuitive, he's like intuitive, intuitive, intuitive. And now guess what? Guess who's using the word
Ah.
intuitive? Oh,
Yeah.
you got to listen to your intuition. I said, oh, you don't say.
Oh my God,
You
what
don't
is that?
say.
Tell me more. That's
It was
amazing.
funny. Oh my goodness. But can you talk a little bit about your intuitive coaching and like different types of transformative experiences that you want to share or a success story from your client?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so intuitive coaching, you explained it in the beginning, but it's sort of a combination of intuitive reading and life coaching. And so I have all the skills to do the life coaching side of things, but then I've also been trained in intuition. So what I love so much, and this is how I felt when I saw my first coach, is that instead of when I was seeing her, instead of me trying to figure everything out, she could just see me. She could see all my stories. She could almost read my mind. It was kind of scary. Um, and so it was really, really helpful for her to have the intuition aspect because I've also received therapy before. And I find that it's a lot more, I love therapy. I get therapy as well, but it's a different modality. It's a little bit more, I feel it just doesn't have that intuitive part of it, right? So it's a little bit different. But yeah, in terms of client success stories, I've had certain clients. I specifically actually started working on anxiety and stress because I had this client who had a panic attack every day. And it was so heartbreaking for me because when I had panic attacks, I did not have them every day. And so I just thought, I can't believe that you are living like this. This is wild to me. Um, and so within a couple of months, we did a lot of work around looking into the childhood, looking into her upbringing, looking at what was causing all of this contraction, this tension on a day-to-day basis. And I think having the intuition side was really helpful because sometimes when you're really in it, you can't see what's going on. And so having the intuition side was really helpful because I was able to point out what was kind of going on in her body. And she was like, oh, yeah, right, that my stomach does feel like that actually. And so within a couple of months, she stopped having panic attacks. And that was to me one of my
Mm.
just biggest stories in terms of client success because again, I've had panic attacks before. They're really difficult, they're really exhausting, and having them every day is next level. And that was really big. And what we noticed was, just getting into it a little bit, we noticed that she was doing a lot of the things that she thought would help. So for example, she would exercise every day, and, try to kind of work out all of the anxiety.
Yeah.
But sometimes we try to make up for it in ways that aren't really helpful. So she was sort of over exercising, sort of over binging on Netflix, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found was that it was important for her to really allow herself to be with all of her emotions. And
Mm-hmm.
that was really difficult because so many of us, like you said, we're always distracting, we're running, we're numbing, we're finding, you know, a new series to watch, all of the things. But if we can really just sit down with ourselves, and whether it's journaling or just really getting in touch with, well, what's actually going on in my mind and what's really going on in my body in terms of my emotions. And that for her was like the biggest just life changer. Because instead of all of the emotions just sort of enveloping her and like causing this tension and then building up into a panic attack every day, the emotions had somewhere to go. They were starting to be released. And that was a really, really big transformation for her.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that because there's hope. I mean, if one was having a panic attack every day, then not having any, I mean, like that's a big deal. Like, I wish I would have known you a long time ago.
Oh, you're so cute.
Yeah, no, I don't actually suffer panic attacks. If it is like, if I feel like any type of like like I don't even call it panic attack. I wouldn't even like entertain those words in my head anymore. Like, you get to different levels where you're like, wait, no, it's excitement to me. Like, I think of it like if it's like anxiety, quote unquote, it's excitement. I'm like, oh, that's like when I get a little bit like anxious, like if something new that I don't know and I haven't done yet, like say for
Hmm.
example, going to go on stage and speak. Okay,
Hmm.
ow, it's kind of a little scary there, but you know what? It's that excitement. It doesn't have to be all, oh my goodness, and then pass out. We have to reframe our thoughts as well. So that's awesome that she no longer has panic attacks. And how long were you working with her?
We worked together for 3 months. And it was
Oh,
funny because after the 2 months, she was like, okay, well, now what? And I'm like, now we can work on all the other fun stuff. Like, what are your goals? What are your dreams? Like, let's get right into it.
she's all
Um,
now what? That's funny.
yeah, it was so funny. Whenever clients get to that point, I'm like, no, 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 no. You don't stop the work now. Like now we get into the fun stuff, which is, all of the actually dreaming about what we want and what we want to manifest, what we want to create in our life. That stuff is so fun. And if we can just, get through the more, let's just say, challenging or more intense inner work where it's all of the emotions we're dealing with, the fears that are coming up, once we kind of get through that initial work, it's just all fun. It's all
Mhm.
fun. And even, going through the emotions, I always try to make it fun. That's one of my core values in my business. I don't want things to be so, challenging and difficult. I try to keep things fun anyway. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, you don't want it to be all robotic. We're human
I
beings,
know.
and
Yeah.
we're living, breathing air and life into our businesses and into our clients practically. So it's a beautiful to experience that. And you're right about also sitting with our emotions and discovering, why am I acting this way? Why am I having these thoughts? Why am I feeling this way? But just having that moment just to pause. A lot of us don't take the time to pause. We're conditioned to hustle and grind, hustle and grind, hustle and grind. And especially as females, we should be hustling and grinding all the time. We need to
Hmm.
relax and enjoy the nature, enjoy the walks, enjoy our family, enjoy the fun things in life that brings us joy.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that when people unplug, no TV, no cell phone, no anything, and then just kind of like go out somewhere like, so we were watching this movie, and I've been watching a lot of movies where people are going through their sitting with themselves and going through these emotions and really learning. But I noticed they're like excluded, like they're far away, like in mountains. There's
Mm.
like no cell reception or anything. But I honestly think that would help if you don't have any distractions and you're sitting with yourself. You could be with a loved one or whomever or friend, and just like, wow, and just either journal, talk to somebody, even make videos. Who knows? Well, I guess that's using the technology. Here I go with the technology again.
Yeah.
But doing
I mean,
certain things. Yeah.
yeah, if you kind of like tunnel vision yourself in a little bit, it's really helpful. I mean, I even it's okay, so right now it's 11:30 and my phone was on airplane mode until like an hour ago. And I do that every day because I know that it's the mind is like, the mind is like it fixates on things. So if we open up our phone first thing in the morning and then
Mhm.
we see all that stuff, it's like chaotic and it is that dopamine fix that we're looking for. But like you said, if we actually sit down, I think it can be scary, like uncomfortable. I don't want to say scary, but it can be uncomfortable at first. But that's actually where the true joy is getting through that little discomfort of, ooh, okay, I'm going to sit with myself. But then suddenly you have an idea to, oh, maybe I'll learn a new, song on my piano. And then that's where true joy lives. That's where the creativity lives. That's where the abundance lives. And that's where that inner wisdom lives. So it's not just, oh, I'm sitting with myself and I guess I'll be with my emotions because Raman told me to. There's so much juice there and so much depth, and that's where real joy lives. And I think that's a lot of what we're missing these days. But that's personally where I find so much joy is when I'm sitting down, and sometimes I'll get bored and then I'll pick up a poetry book or something and then joy. So yeah.
Absolutely. And it goes to why a lot of people have left the corporate world, and because they find that they didn't have joy in their everyday 9 to 5 job. It's like a job. It's not like their passion. So like my work right now is my passion. This is something that I wanted to always do. And it so beautifully it came together. And I'm like, oh wow, this is amazing. So I notice a lot of people are leaving their corporate jobs. And I think the whole COVID pause actually helped people discover their passions and gifts, and finding different things that they thought they would not be ever good at. But then they're like, hey, I'm an expert in all of a sudden. You'd be surprised at the gifts that you actually have, but it's just a matter of applying them and trying them. Like we were just talking the other day, my husband and I were like, we're going to get some instruments and start practicing doing some musical instruments. And for me, like, I feel like I should be playing like the violin. So maybe that's something I'm going to learn. I've never played an instrument in my life before, besides like in elementary school, when we have like music class, we're playing like the little triangle things or
The triangle.
the little, yeah,
Love it.
little fun things like the maracas and everything. Those are the only
Mhm.
thing that I got near with instruments. But as an adult, I'm like, let me try to maybe play a flute, but I'm for something like resonating with me is like the violin. So I have to look into the violin. I do
Mhm.
love the violin. So yeah, I definitely think whatever you love to do, or whatever you think you're like, oh, maybe I should look into that. There's YouTube videos that will go ahead and help you discover how to do it, and just apply, and apply, and you'll be happy.
Absolutely. And that's like I learned to play the keyboard when I was I think in high school maybe, and it was all from YouTube videos.
Oh, wow.
And so it's amazing how much is out there for us to learn. It's just taking action. Yeah.
Yeah, taking action. And do you have any other like daily practices or tips that you would recommend for maintaining like peace and purpose in our hectic lives, of course?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I love the idea of creating a baseline of peace. We kind of already talked about that, but for me, that's really shifting our base beliefs about what life is. And so, of course, you've heard all you guys already, like whoever's listening to this, you already know the main things, right? Go into nature, go for a walk, recalibrate yourself to that slower pace. Pet your cat, all that kind of stuff. Working out's actually really great. I'm a big fan of just movement to make sure you're moving every day. But, even if you're doing all of the things, and I'm saying that in quotation marks, sometimes that's still not creating a baseline of peace because our core belief might be time's running out. I have so much to do. And so even when we're on our nature walk, we're like, okay, let me just get through this nature walk and then go back to my life. It's really on a day-to-day basis reminding yourself that you can breathe, you're safe. And instead of time is running out, I have so much to do, really kind of getting yourself more into the flow state, really allowing yourself to take breaks, realizing that stress actually decreases productivity, reminding yourself that there is time and that, as long as you're showing up and taking action and making progress, you're allowed to sit down and have that time for yourself. I think it's not even about like the actual things, it's about allowing ourselves
Mhm.
to feel at peace and allowing ourselves to do those things. Because what stops us is the idea that we don't have time to do those things and that those things aren't as important. But I think that when we can actually slow down, then we can actually be present to life and not let it pass us by.
Yes, because it goes by so fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And how do you see the future of intuitive coaching evolve in the wellness industry?
Wow. I mean, when I started, I didn't know any other intuitive coaches besides the ones that went through my program. So I actually didn't know that it was a thing. um, and now I do see the word intuitive coach a lot more, which is so exciting because I think there are so many different people doing different things, like with you and the alcohol free stuff. I think that's so, so amazing. I've seen people doing intuitive business coaching. So I love all of the different niches, intuitive coaching for moms, all the different things. In terms of it evolving, I mean, I'm just excited to see all the different specifics of what intuitive coaching can be, right? Because I'm sure one day I'll need um, a coach for being a mom or something like that, right? And so it
Mm.
would be amazing for me to have an intuitive coach who is coaching for moms or something like that. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm so happy that there are so many coaches out there because God knows we need them.
Totally.
Yeah.
I know we do. And there's a lot out there. And then you just have to align to the one that works for you.
Mhm.
And where can listeners find you on social media, your website, or even just to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Raman Hari 3. My website is ramanhari.com. I keep it really simple. And then in terms of working with me, you can go onto my website. I have a free guide. Actually, I just recently revamped it and updated it. It's 12 whole pages
Oh, that's awesome.
to help with anxiety and stress specifically. So you can find that on my website if you just scroll to the bottom on any of the pages. And those are the main things that I have going on now. In terms of actually working one on one coaching, I am mainly doing a program called Beyond Anxiety. It's a 12-week program where clients see me every single week. And we really help them sort of lean into the root cause, like you were talking about before, of what's going on for them, as well as really shifting some of the triggers, making friends with their anxiety. And then by the end of the program, they will have a much better idea of what their purpose is as well. So I kind of like to weave in purpose a little bit into there. And again, that's a 12-week program. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on a lot recently. So that's called Beyond Anxiety. And that's also on my website.
Amazing. And I will have all of those links in the show notes. But yeah, so lastly, what message would you like to leave with the listeners today regarding like personal growth and spiritual development?
Love yourself into healing. Don't
Love.
hate yourself into healing. Love yourself into healing. Love yourself enough to show up for yourself and prioritize your peace, and then be of service to others.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Robin, for joining me today. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Of course.